evening to all of you once again. And I will only put it like this very, very briefly. I thought I must tell you that if you searched, if you browsed for, shall we say, barriers to environmental behavior or pro-environmental kind of behavior, as barriers go, you will see that there are multiple papers that sort of pop up. There was one guy who talks about how there are 33 such barriers that he has identified. He calls them the Dragons of Inaction. Now, cognition is a challenge, he says, and we all know how sometimes we refuse to accept. Discredence is one of them. That is, we don't want to believe that the government can do anything, or that actually there is an environmental issue at all. There are very many people. There is in fact, one book, I can't even remember the name of these two authors who wrote that, some 15 years ago, who said there isn't any concern, there is no issue at all of the environment. Who are these people who talk about how these, who are these doomsayers who talk about these fears of what can happen? Is another part of thinking that continues to happen after all these, very evidence-based things that we know of as far as climate change goes. So how do you take on simple things on behavior when we, in Bangalore, we go and tell people that there is a very real crisis coming on in the next, say, 5 to 6 years, and that you're not going to have water, and that people will have to be evacuated from your city by 26 or 2027, that is. People don't believe it. They say, okay, I pay this much as money and I get water, and there is nothing that can change. So this session today, we talked to Mary from Global Water Works. We talked to Dr. Raj Rajaram in Chicago, who's also been dedicated is a very minor word as far as water and conservation goes. We talked to many of our own leaders here of WOW, as well as of other agencies. And we said, let's again go back to seeing what we can do to explore how we break these barriers or breach these barriers to behavior. I will stop here and probably ask if it's okay with Usha to see, he says a few words, especially because this new stringing of themes has led us to want to invite, thanks to Mary, of course, and thanks to Raj and others from the United States. It has encouraged us to see how we can have some speakers, experts from elsewhere, while we have our own leaders either being inspired or adding to the conversation and adding value to the conversation. Usha, therefore, 1 or 2 minutes, and then we invite Rashid to speak.
First of all, yes, Dr. Hari, your audio did have some disturbance. Ganesh, you're right. Yeah, no, I had said it is okay, but now I think there was. Okay. Yeah, nothing really much except that I'm, like I told Mary and the other speakers, I'm eagerly waiting for this session because this seems to be the biggest challenge. I had not realized what a challenge this behavioral mindset or whatever you call it would be. And I think if we kind of cross over this, we have won maybe more than 50% of the battle. So all I would want to say is that I am waiting to hear how something positive, which I'm sure all the speakers have to share with us.
Sure. An afterthought, Raj, do you want to say something before we request Rashid, or would you want to speak after he does?
I just want to say one word. One of my friends asked me a question. How do you keep calm when talking to these kinds of naysayers who says there's no problem, and they just deny everything and they don't listen to any, advice as to how to conserve water? I just say we just have to be objective and not question their motives, saying that, oh, they have some self-interest, that's why, or they are selfish, all those things. Once we do that, our minds close and we don't keep the conversation going. So we have to be open-minded, calm about it, but be persistent in our goal to convince people that there are ways to save water, recycle and reuse so that we all can survive together instead of all suffering, unnecessarily. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, Ahmed Rashid Al Khatabi. Your profile will show up on the chat box. Therefore, I'm not going to speak too much about you. I'm only going to say that you're a recent doctoral, successful whatever thesis and so on from the University of North Carolina. Chapel Hill, I have to say, because there is another one in UNC. Over to you now. Yeah.
Fantastic.
and-
Thank you for that introduction. Okay, Mary, please.
Yes, Mary.
Yes, if I could just add, it's a wonderful, Hari, to invite AR Al-Katabi here. What I'm most excited about is that when we met him, he had just graduated from Chapel Hill, and the next moment we knew he was the ORISE Fellow at the United States EPA, the Environmental Protection Association, which is the leading organization in the United States watching over our waterways. So he has a very influential role today and a perspective from North America. So thank you for joining us from Morocco. Yeah.
And thank you for having, got him for us. Thank you, Mary. Over to you, Raj.
It's a pleasure being here. Thank you, Mary, for the invitation. And I just want to start by saying that it's very encouraging to hear you all talk about water conservation and the concept of demand management. For the last, I want to say 50 to 100 years, the dominant concept in water management was all about supply. How do we ensure enough supply and forget behavior, right? Make sure we have enough water, people can go about their daily lives, do whatever they want. But now the conversation over the last 20 years or so has been moving more towards conservation, and especially it sounds like right now is really taking a life on its own. So that's progress, I think. So like Mary said, I did my dissertation at University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. My background, so I graduated from the urban planning department. So my primary concern is the sustainability of water resources in urban environments. But my training is in economics. So what I'm trying to signal by that is I really care about people's behavior and how to influence people's behavior and the approaches that we can take to influence people's behavior and evaluate approaches and see if they work, see if people actually change their behavior in response to certain policies. There are various ways to approach conservation. In my dissertation, I look at three. The first is technology, because technology is kind of in many minds, it's the silver bullet. We can create a new product. We can create technology to get out of whatever scarcity issue that we have. We've seen this before in the energy sector numerous times. We've seen this with food, but in the water sector, even though there is this hope and we see people talk about it, there's also this reputation that the water sector has of not being that innovative. And so one thing I was particularly interested in is whether or not we see people create new technologies, as in the behavior of innovators, entrepreneurs, whether or not these people create new technologies in response to water, in response to water issues. When water is scarce, do people produce new technologies? I'm not in this work. I wasn't concerned with how people adopt these technologies, but whether or not people create these technologies. The adoption side of it is a whole different ballgame, and I'm looking forward to having discussions with you about any of the stuff I talked about, but the adoption issue is a separate one. So that paper was just looking at the creation of new technologies.
Hari, may I take a cue from Ahmed?
Sure, please.
I'm very happy to see economists as part of this particular group.
Sure.
Never heard of economists in many of our water meetings. And therefore, at the risk of being a parrot, some of you have heard my comments on small peg and large peg a long time back, but for your benefit, I'm a hotelier by profession, and I'm in the sustainable development space since last 32 years. And I first talk about behavioral changes, and creating a story out of something looks very insignificant. So I have been telling hotels not to give a full glass of water, but to offer a small glass of water and use humor, small peg or large peg. Then people tell me, what the hell is this? How much water will you say? Then I said, please do the maths. If there are 500,000 restaurants in the country, actually there are more, and they sell 3 meals, it's 15 lakh meals. And I'm taking a conservative figure of 1 liter of water wasted per restaurant. The figure is 10 times more, or maybe 20 times more, I don't know. And I don't care for that. Then I tell people that, look at the sheer quantity of water that you save without any technology and all the rigmarole that we do, STP water, etc. So the strategy which I tell to people is that, look, take a top of the pipeline approach and not an end of pipeline approach. Unfortunately, the world is glamorized with technology and taking giving a lot of attention to end of pipeline technology. I have a friend in Dubai. He runs a restaurant. So I told him about a year back, you know, you should tell your guests not to overorder. He said, "Oh my God, are you my enemy?" In Dubai, if you don't overorder, your friends will think that you're a miserly guy. Then I told him about the virtual water and food. I said, forget the small peg and large peg. Look at the amount of water that you waste in a dry country with embedded water. Okay. So
Sure.
since you're an economist, I thought I'll give you this backdrop.
Sure, sure. Niranjan, I didn't want to stop you because, you're one of those wonderful guys to listen to. But we thought we will ask Rashid to speak. I'll tell you why his thing is interesting for us, and we should listen to him for the next 15 minutes or plus, or whatever he wants to speak.
Sure.
He is, what is amazing is he's saying, I am not talking about adoption of technology and barriers. I am talking about barriers to creation of new technology. And therefore, I think his story is interesting. Over to you back again, Rashid.
Thank you. I thought that introduction was very interesting. So one thing I'll thank you for that comment. I'll take this opportunity to say one thing, that solutions in the water sector, even though the problem of water scarcity is, you can say it's a global issue. You can also say that many of the problems that create the issue of scarcity are the same in many places. That being said, the solutions may look extremely different in different places because of local factors. In some places they may work, some places, other solutions, the same solution will not work. Like you were talking about the provision of a glass of water. Some places, like for example in California, they had their most recent drought. One of the solutions was don't give any water until someone asks for it, because normally they would automatically come up and give you a glass of water, right, without asking, with ice. So water plus a different form of water. During the drought, they said no water, until someone asked. So that's little things like that do matter, and but in some places like Dubai, the culture may prevent you from implementing such a solution. So with that caveat in mind, the paper that I was telling you about was the creation of the barriers to potential barriers, whether or not entrepreneurs, they take signals, cues from the environment and they create new technologies. What I found was they don't. When you see a drought, you look, in the time period following a drought, you don't necessarily see the creation of new technologies. So that's an issue. But I also, in that same paper, looked at, there was in the US and in other parts of the world, there's what's called a technology cluster. So it's an organization, or it's a solution, policy solution that brings together different entities, different institutional entities like government, private sector, and universities, and kind of creates this environment where entrepreneurs can kind of thrive. And when I find in that scenario, when this policy is implemented, that you do see a very noticeable increase in the amount of technologies that are created. So that's one solution that worked in the US and potentially elsewhere. I also looked at the role of pricing, and so that also gets at your comment, because pricing is one of those solutions that it's from an economist's perspective, it's very popular, but it's very difficult to implement for local reasons. So what I looked at was one of the issues with price is that, like you were saying, there are people that I think, Hari, I think this was part of your introduction, that there's a lot of people that use a lot of water, keep doing what they're doing. They pay for a certain amount of water, and nothing will change that. So you can increase price and see if that does anything. Because prices are hard to increase, it's very hard to sometimes detect whether or not prices work or don't work. So I was lucky enough to use a situation where prices were increased on the order of 40%, and find that people that irrigate, people that use a lot of water to maintain lawns, for example, they actually do reduce their water consumption when the price of that water increases. So that's very good news for the use of pricing. That being said, you have to be careful about affordability issues, because depending on the city, depending on the context, it may be very hard for that particular reason. You don't want to leave people without water, especially during times of COVID. You want people to be able to wash their hands, and we're concerned with public health. One of the things that I also looked at in that particular study was during droughts. whether or not restrictions work. So when the local governments come and tell you, reduce your water consumption to 3 days a week, or outdoor water consumption, discretionary, stuff that is not necessary for survival, but stuff that's, for more recreation. Reduce it to 3 times a week, reduce it to once a week, don't use it at all, right? So different types of restrictions. What I find there is that when you reduce it to none at all, then you start to see an effect among irrigators. But when it's 3 times a week, twice a week, irrigators still tend to use a lot of water.
How do we implement that when we have a bulk water using building, shall we say an apartment of say 200 homes? How do you think we can go about doing that?
It's a very good question. It's very hard to monitor in places where you have bulk metering. So the study that I was looking at was looking at single family households where it was, it was clear that this family was using this amount of water. In bulk households, it's at least in the US, and I would say even Morocco, it's very uncommon for bulk apartment buildings to have gardens, like lawns. So to use a large amount of water in that respect, you could have like balcony gardens and stuff like this, or rooftop gardens, but it's not common to have lots of grass that requires a lot of water. That being said, it's a huge challenge to know what's going on in the building because of data considerations. You don't know how many people are in the building. You don't know how many accounts. Sometimes you don't even have any meters whatsoever, let alone bulk. It's like this. This water isn't even being charged. So one of the things that I was looking into when I was looking into the effect of restrictions when the government comes and tells you you have to, or the water utility comes and says you have to restrict your water use in some way. What I was interested in that I was looking at whether or not people actually got fined for exceeding the limits. I couldn't find any evidence that people were fined, but what I did find was that the local municipality was thanking people for coming forward and reporting incidences of so-called water waste. And so that's like a measure of community engagement. People care about water conservation. They see someone during a drought not conserving. And so they go tell the municipality or the water utility, look, there's someone over there. This is a period of drought. There's someone over there that's exceeding the limits. And so I looked into the role of what I call opprobrium or peer shaming, drought shaming in California during the most severe drought that they've had, and that was in 2015, 2016. And examine the role of opprobrium. And what I find is that places that it doesn't matter what the utility did, as in it doesn't matter if the utility increased price, it doesn't matter. That being said, they didn't increase price by that much, but it doesn't matter what strategy they took. The places where people reported more, people were more engaged in the conservation process, you see more savings in those places. And so, that gets at for me, this gets at the whole topic of water conservation. It's the solution lies in behavior. If you get people to change their behavior, whether it be through social pressure, whether it be through price, that will go an extremely long way. So that's kind of an overview of the work that I've done. I'm happy to talk about it more, or any topic that you all want to talk about.
Anyone else, please, who wants to either ask him or share some insights before we get to Mary Eggert?
Yeah, I just really enjoyed AR, and we just had AR involved in another discussion at Global Waterworks on Thursday, and other people were very impressed to hear about the impact that you saw with water clusters, areas where there are initiatives focused on water. Could you speak to that?
Sure, the technology issue, sure. One of the things that I did with my paper was to think about, the issue of a technology cluster as a solution. If you were to think about two identical places, right? Whether or not if we implement a technology cluster as a solution, would you get more innovation? And so that was the goal of that paper. So to take two places that look identical in terms of their infrastructure, and then one gets a technology cluster, and you get to see all these you get all these resources connected whether or not you get more. And the answer was yes, you get more innovation when the resources are connected. And so that gets at a lot of the barriers in the water sector. In that, there's barriers of financing. So when you get more people together in a room, they're more likely to help each other with financing. There's networking. So you may have an idea, but you don't know the right people to to make it happen, or you need to workshop that idea more. But when or you don't know how feasible or practical the idea is, but when you're in a room with different different players in the water space, you can make that idea happen, and in a way that you wouldn't have been able to do on your own. Those sorts of solutions, and in the context of a technology cluster, they matter, it seems, a lot.
Sure. Interesting.
The other thing with technology, and that goes to Niranjan's point, was there are technologies and there are technologies, right? There are technologies that actually in the end help, and then there are other technologies that may be counterproductive. And so if you're an innovator on your own working on something, you may not know the difference. You may create something thinking that it will work, but it's not until you workshop that idea with end users or people that are actually going to use that technology that you actually know that it will work, right? So that's another interesting part of technology clusters, that you actually come up with technologies that hopefully will make a difference.
Ganesh Shanbag, can you ask him the same, the kind of predicament you have, many of us have, in your apartment, of not being able to persuade them to see certain points of view? And let's see what Rashid's own methodological learning and understanding offers as insight.
Yeah, first of all, Rashid, thanks for this nice, what do I call, insights, right? So whatever the way you have put, definitely, like the small audience over here, it actually pinches us in some way that we all are early adapters, or like we all are passionate towards these programs, and we know. The real challenge is, I just put it in the chat as well, right? Like we know that there has been a necessity of technologies, there has been a necessity of solutions, but the problem is the population is so huge and they don't realize the problem, like the, what do you call, like the intensity of the problem. See, people are waiting for apocalypse to come, but they don't know like the symptoms of when it is coming. That's how I can put it. So I've been to give you a context, right? I have been working with multiple apartment associations in Bangalore for fixing the rainwater harvesting, simple sewage treatment, the modular ones, and all these kind of things. But people don't want to just get into it. It's very simple, right? I don't want to do it myself. I put it on somebody else to do it. That's what the mentality of people is. There is no narrative around this. To be honest, right? People don't even talk about sewage. Right, all the STP companies, including our own people over here, advertise sewage is gold, right? That's how it is, and we can make like a lot of benefits out of the sewage. But people don't. There is a taboo in India. They don't want to talk about sewage at all. So, what do you think? Like, how do you want to see this problem of human engineering be tackled?
I'll just add one sentence to that, Rashid. Maybe it'll help you respond better. The last meeting that we had of this kind, the same Dr. Raj Rajaram said, why are you guys talking about anything but water? What is this difference between black water, gray water, white water, and some other types of water? There is only one thing called water. If we have that kind of a mindset, then we know that we will treat water, the sort of thing that Ganesh is talking about. In another meeting, Mary said, the most, if I can paraphrase her, if I'm wrong, she will correct me. She said that the fastest growing natural resource today is used water, she said. Look at how you can see this if we all want to get to a better place, as Ganesh says. Go on, Ganesh, you want to say something before Rashid's response?
Yeah, just I want to take the phrase from the white paper shared by our Tarun, right? He says the same thing. Like, we are using the same water what dinosaurs drank some 67 million years back. We are not drinking something new. It's getting recycled over and over again. And our USR, as he puts it, right? There is no wastewater. There is only wasted water. So this narrative is not getting inculcated in the brains of our so-called intelligent society over here. And people like Dr. Hari has been doing wonderful job in cultivating this idea, and many people have joined in the nice moment. But how do we get more people adapt to this? That has been a challenge, and this I mean, that's what I say. Engineering can be done. Engineering can bring in a lot of new innovations, a lot of new technology. But what is the main engineering needed is either social engineering or the human engineering, which has the behavioral changes to be brought in. Over to you. And again, thanks and shukran for the nice insights.
Hari, I'll take a cue from the how that Ganesh mentioned. Today we are in a world which is full of hep and hype, and social media is magnifying this. So how do we get the Tom Hanks or the Amitabh Bachchans of the world to, say, this is cool if I drink a small glass of water, and stigmatize somebody who's using full glass of water? Like cigarette smoking. If you smoke in my office, you'll get a dirty look from me, right? So how do we get this to happen from the apex level, not from people like you and me? I consider myself a joker. People they won't take you seriously. But if these messaging can happen through the Tom Hanks and whoever it is, because again, 2015, I went to California and I went to the aquarium there, and a young girl was taking us around, and she said, if you reduce your water consumption, then these fish and animals will have some water for them. And California in the midst of a very deep drought. I come out, I'm hungry, and I go to a restaurant, and they give me a glass which is the size of Empire State Building with 10 cubes of ice. I said, hey, these guys should be taught these lessons instead of giving lessons to us. So
That's
I'm
what
trying
he
to
said.
bring the perspectives of how things have to change globally.
Yeah. Over to you, Rashid.
Thank you, Ganesh. I mean, those were, you brought up a lot of interesting points. I think the first point you brought up is that, there are people that don't want to take the responsibility of doing the change first. They want other people to do it first, right? Even if they know there's an apocalypse coming. The way I would kind of frame that is the idea that water and wastewater too, they're shared resources, right? And that's what's called in economics a public good. And the problem is that's a shared responsibility for the provision of that good, which means that, even if I do something, the benefits that I get from doing that action is really small, but the cost is going to be really high. Whereas we need everyone to kind of pitch in order to get the benefits, right? And so what incentive do I have by myself to do this? That's kind of the big, that's the big problem. And that's where, we need either governments to step in, or we need, different policy interventions. And so that's why we need, the overarching structure to get people to change their behavior, to create the incentives necessary so that people think it's in their best interest. The other topic you brought up was the concept of reuse. So related to that, right? People find it, it's the concept of wasted water. There's no wasted water. There's no wastewater. There's only wasted water. In other words, if you take water that's been used already, treat it to the exact quality that you would get from, regular water, the regular drinking water, people won't want to drink it because it was previously wastewater. They call it the yuck factor. It's yucky, right? But if you think about one thing, if you're an astronaut, and this is something that kind of blew my mind, but it's true. If you're an astronaut on the space station, how much water do they take up with them? They don't take that much, right? They have to recycle that water constantly. They drink that water, they pee it out, or whatever, it comes out, they need to treat that wastewater.
Happens in ships too.
Exactly. But it's not just my pee, right? It's your pee, it's everyone else who's on that ship.
Sure.
Right? And so, when you tell someone you want to be an astronaut, they're like, sure, yeah, sure, it's glamorous. Are you ready to drink that guy's
I think
pee?
it is from Mamta ma'am. She has to mute a bit.
Yeah. Please mute. You have to mute, or host, please mute. Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah.
No worries. But it's an interesting, and you're absolutely right. There's no difference functionally between water that, surface water, groundwater that we take, we treat, we provide, and the wastewater that we produce, and we put it through the filtration system and produce it and provide it to people. Functionally, there's no difference, right? You're absolutely right in that. But for some reason, there's a yuck factor. And so, there are a few things that I can think of that, that may make a difference in the long, in terms of people's behavior. I think, Ari, you were mentioning, the Tom Hanks of the world. So marketing really matters. Branding really matters. The way you talk about things really matters. Even if you say, oh, it's the same. Sure. But you want to make it seem glamorous.
Niranjan, he was talking about, Tom Hanks or Shah Rukh Khan or somebody else. As a matter of fact, when I walked into Morocco, I had a challenge with the visa guy until I mentioned Shah Rukh Khan. And everybody said, okay, I'm going to now let you go in. So I'm saying, in October 2008, October 8th, the Singapore National Day, the Prime Minister went on television drinking that water that comes off. It's called new water now. 13 years they've been producing it. China, 60% of urban China is today on that wastewater loop completely. 60% of it is done. China has the same number of towns as we have got, about 8,000 towns / agglomerations and so on. I'm saying it is not therefore about mindset. People possibly need the stick. Is that what we need here in a country like this, which cannot afford to do it? Look at Toronto, look at Chicago. They are supplying LPCD about 1,100 liters, which is fine. You know why it's fine is there will always be these challenges of abundance in some place and shortage in another. Afghanistan, Kabul gets 30 LPCD, and that with great difficulty, right? I mean, if you looked at any browser, it will tell you. Dhaka is getting about 40 liters LPCD. We get about 150 liters in Bangalore, where we are sitting now. So I understand that there are disparities, sometimes gross. But my point is, when we have a crisis like Ganesh said or Niranjan said, and we know it is there before us in the next 4 years, 5 years, he called it apocalypse, you can call it what you like. Why are we not acting? What do we do? What is this, lack of fear in the human species on these matters?
Sir, I just want to pitch in here. So I have seen that video where the Singapore Prime Minister was drinking the Neo water, or other way, our Prime Minister when he visited Israel, and there also he drank along with their President Benjamin Netanyahu, right? They had the toast with that. So these kind of things bring in narratives definitely. But what is the problem with our country is basically we consider water as one of the last bit of socialisms in our country, right? And it's politically connected as well. So I think that is where we are getting some kind of a hindrance in these changes.
Mary has a very heartening story to tell us of a utility which targeted cautiously a certain quantum of water, and I'd rather have her tell the story, and they did nearly twice as much as was targeted. So Mary Connolly Eggert, now it is up to you to give us, you have to unmute yourself. Yeah. And yes. Come.
Yeah, thank you. Always a pleasure to be here with you all because you share our passion and also our vision. Together we can solve this global water crisis in this generation because we see it happening. We see it happening with Israel. We see it happening with what you're doing with the WOW Action Forum and people actually taking action, which has really surprised me because, as Ahmed said, it's a challenge with technology. Actually, they've had to innovate in technology because it's so hard to change behaviors. So they keep saying, we'll create a tighter aerator, we'll let less water through, we'll, keep our pipes from allowing much to flow. And then we have other problems in our waters. So we just need to balance all the time. But your mention before I share about that story, what drove the other company, what's happened in the past for major movements like litter or forest fires is we've addressed children. If you see a fire, put it out with Smokey the Bear, a special image that is very friendly that causes kids to see, or for seatbelts, a campaign for them to click it or or get a ticket, and then they remind their parents to do it. So if we can engage youth in something, and that is what my colleague in the UK is doing with a company called Get Water Fit. It actually, we came across it 5 years ago, and it was called Save Water, Save Money. And what helped for the utilities and for everyone to engage customers was a policy in the UK that says we are not going to allow you to raise water rates unless you show that you have customers engaged. And so my colleague had just come back from the US where he experienced a drought. He was surprised to see that the UK was in the same situation. And he said, well, I can help with that. And what they did was they offered consumers gifts, simple little boxes of aerators or devices to stop the leaks, detect the leaks on the toilets, or to hold water in the sink so that they could keep the water in the basin and use it for the plants after they wash their dishes. But they were asked by the utilities to show customer engagement. So they created a simple survey because truth be told, our utilities have done such a great job that people are really disconnected from their water and they don't even know how much they're using. But the survey works as a, in fact, I don't know, Ganesh, can I show that video?
Please.
Yes,
Yeah.
Mary, you can show that video, and possibly if the audio is not coming in, we have to share the audio as well. Like, I mean, because YouTube has its own audio stream, right? I mean, it has to mix with your mic as well as that YouTube audio stream. So you can
Yeah.
try,
Okay.
possibly we can like
When
try
you
to
share
do
the
it
screen,
here.
you can click the button.
Yeah.
Yep, I will do
Yeah,
that. Okay.
yeah.
Let me see. I can do that here. Just so that everyone, it's a 1-minute video. And we'll see. You'll all.
You have to increase the audio on the movie also, I think.
I did that.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No good. Thanks.
Yeah, there you are.
Without information
Oops.
about how they use water in their homes by each fixture and appliance, people just don't know how much water they should actually be using. This is where Get Water Fit comes into the picture. It's a unique digital solution that helps people, your customers, understand their household water footprint. Through a series of tailored questions, Get Water Fit visualizes how and where people use water in their homes and identifies areas where they can reduce their use by providing personalized challenges to save water small steps at a time. They can also join water saving teams to see who can save the most water, providing Get Water Fit with its own viral marketing mechanism. For water utilities, Get Water Fit is a whole of business proposition that identifies in-home leaks, explains metered bills, delivers remote plumber services, switches customers to online billing, targets personalized communications, improves customer services, and more. And it provides readily accessible and usable information about a customer's water use. Whatever your objectives, Get Water Fit provides the platform to influence how your customers engage with their water company and how they use water behind closed doors. Get in touch through today.
Yeah, Mary, I must say this, when I see this communication is more a B2B communication. This is not a B2C communication. It's not coming to the end water user. They're making a communication which can be taken by somebody who's running another business, then they need to take it forward. This forum, like in many ways, what you are also attempting to do, I mean, in India, we have got the CII, we have got the Green Building Council, multiple such associations, all of whom talk only to each other. Business talks to business. I'm saying here is a collective consumer talking to consumer. What appealed from what Ahmed Rashid was talking about was, he's saying, look, one of the behavior things was about networking to understand how solutions are effective for me, how they are perhaps not for you, and how to build such, shall we say, circles of, influence among consumers. I think Rashid said that that is one of the behavior, whatever solutions that you need to do apart from financing and all that.
So,
see what you said. Sorry, go on, please. Somebody. Yeah.
No, please. Finish.
Yeah.
No,
Please.
I apologize.
Please go ahead.
Well, there are two things. One, you sparked a thought in my head. So there are two things. When you said it's a B2B, it could be a P2C, right? Like you could think about it as like a Fitbit, but you need people to care.
Sure.
Right. And then the other thing, Mary, when I was watching the video, the first thing that came to mind was there's a shower, a new shower head that instead of putting out whatever it is, 90 gallons or however many liters to take a shower, right? Instead, it puts out a mist, and so you can take your shower with at least a third of the water, at most a third of the water of a traditional shower. So you can shower with extremely little amount of water. And the problem is it's a mist, but people like the feeling of a shower.
Yeah.
And so how do you get people to adopt that technology?
Yeah.
They like that water pressure. And then just one thing that I just want to emphasize, just in terms of especially changing behavior during an apocalypse or a period of acute drought, like Ganesh was asking.
Yeah. We have, sorry, go on, Rashid. You have some other thoughts. Please go on.
No, I was just going to say that the role of peer-to-peer, and this gets to your point as well. The role of peer-to-peer pressure is not something that can be, ignored.
Right.
That pressure is very important. There's also some other research, not my research, but research on social networks and the role of tipping points. So when you get you have a city, for example, you get at least 25% of people in on a certain activity, then all of a sudden it goes viral, right? So you need to reach a certain amount of people. You just need to figure out how to get at least 25% of the population excited about something, and then that will take on a life of its own. So it's something that I think is,
Precisely, Rashid. So that's what I mentioned in the chat, right? Like this ice bucket challenge, it went viral because of that hashtag. The same thing I mentioned in the chat, actually.
Yeah, sure.
But unfortunately, it's counterproductive to what we want.
Yeah, bro. Tell them about your story with the ice bucket challenge, AR.
So that's actually one of the things that got me into water to begin with, to be honest. That happened, I lived in California. So after I left, I was very concerned about the drought. I was hearing it. And then at the same time, I see people on social media, my friends dumping water. They asked me to do it. And at the time I wasn't studying water, but I said, no, impossible. There's a drought going on. What are you guys doing? Yes. Instead, I'm going to donate money to, there's a video of me on Facebook saying, no, I'm donating money to water research.
Sure.
That got me angry, but there are people that, but the role of peer-to-peer program or pressure.
Rashid, well, I don't know if Mary wants time for that thing on the utility and the inspiring model, but I have two people here, Mary. One is a person who is just now completing, I think, about 4 million square feet of residential apartments in Bangalore. His name is Guru Prasad. He is here. Let me see if he is willing to unmute. Of this 4 million, there is, I think, about, there is one block of about 250 or 300, no, maybe 400 flats. Guru Prasad will tell us better if he unmutes now, which he is going to start. You know what he talks to me about 3 weeks ago? He's therefore a person who is heading that company, which is building all these residential apartments. Yes, Guru.
Yes, sir.
I will ask you a question after I explain the context.
Yes, sir.
He listened to something that we were talking about. Then I said, Guru, you are now giving away as many as 2,000 plus apartments, which are ready to be occupied by his customers. He says, look, into whatever I'm going to do into the future, what is it that I can do to make my apartments more water efficient? How can I make this a USP for my customer vis-a-vis my competition as a builder? This is the question he asks me. And then we talked about what we could do. Now, maybe I will ask Guru Prasad to unmute and speak. There is another person who has done Rashid, he like Niranjan Khatri, who spent 45 years or 43 years in a five-star chain of hotels. There's another person here called UVK Rao, who has done, trust me on this, about 3,000 projects on energy efficiency, right? He is today at the apex as a technology advisor for energy efficiency and all that. For two large chains of hotels in India, one is the Taj chain of hotels. The other one is Oberoi, the other chain of hotels, which has about 35, 40 hotels in back. Both of these gentlemen are here. First, I'll ask Guru Prasad. Guru Prasad, you tell them your problem as a builder and what you need to achieve for your buildings into the next 5-10 years.
Yes, sir. Good evening, everybody. Sir, this is an opportunity for me to explain what I wanted to do and request you to guide me in future. Any apartment today, be it water conservation, power conservation, or to go to the green buildings, we have to start at the basics only. So in our buildings, we are starting with the basics for doing this RETV, that residential alveolar transmission value we are doing for AG and every building for ours. And based on that, we are telling everybody that we are using porothermal blocks. The weight of the blocks is coming down. The structural weight of the building is coming down. Naturally, the concrete use will come down. The water conservation will happen there only. And the heat generated inside the house is much less compared to other buildings. We have put it, we have studied that fully. Then we have proposed this and we are using that. That the whole thing is we have got a 5-degree variation between outside and inside temperature, and we have checked it every time. And based on this, we have used gypsum plastering, internal, external plastic. But after all this, we also want to go for the usage of power should come down in a large quantity because the power consumption should come down, the AC usage should come down. So you are using the sun path analysis for our buildings. So based on sun path analysis, the daylight is lit fully. So daylight lighting has come down. The AC usage has come down substantially. Like that, we are using this. And the second thing is about water. We are now started using for each and every toilet, a meter is being installed, will be installed every toilet. So this will come to, we will come to know what is the usage of each toilet. Based on this, the usage, people will also start absorbing what is wherever the usage is more, they will come down. So because it is based on the charges, not on a lump sum basis, it is usage basis. Like this, we are trying to bring down the natural resources usage, they're not abused. And even the STPs, we are putting methane recollector. And this, whatever the methane is collected, it will be used for in the clubhouses. Wherever they want to have the clubhouse, they can use this. Or we can use this for lighting the lights, and so that the mosquito menace will come down in the garden area. That we are trying to do. And the ultrafiltration method will be used, so there is no stain in the water. And this will not stain our commodes and wash machines.
Thanks, Guru. You know, what is important also for all of you to know is that this one person sitting here and talking, he is currently doing, my mental math tells me, if I were to put it in dollars, since you're all here, I'll put it in US dollars if you don't mind. It'll come to approximately 800 crores divided by 5. He's doing about $200 million of construction work. Now you have to take his gross value, has sales value to be about 3 times that, $600 million. But Guru Prasad, he's not worried about how much money he's making or he's spending. He is saying, I want my customers to get something that is unique, better than what my other competition is selling. Interesting viewpoint. If anyone wants to speak, I will now turn to Krishna Rao, UV Krishna Rao, ultraviolet Krishna Rao, I call him. Now, UV Krishna Rao is a person who has done over 40 years from about 1984. He's worked with people like C.K. Prahalad, who even, many of you in the US academia will know. I mean, Mary is from the Kellogg School of Business. And this guy was from the Ann Arbor, in Michigan, that school he was from, C.K. Prahalad and say. UVK, can you explain to them how, even last week, when you were speaking to a consultant on a consultant for 5-star hotels, he said, I am not concerned so much about water. I would rather look at energy efficiencies if that is possible. UVK Rao, can you speak about that, please, without taking names? UVK, are you there? I should have first asked him if he is going to be unmuting. Never mind. So let me see. I mean, he might come back. But the thing is this, he speaks to somebody last week. Krishna calls me back and he says, look, this guy is saying, I'm a five-star hotel. Don't ask me to trifle with these things on water. I have to get fresh water. So Krishna explains to him, look, what you get as fresh water from outside is not fresh water. It's water that is more dangerous. Just now, like Rashid said, it's not water that you can use until you treat it again. But you know what that other person's response is? Never mind. Don't bring this to me. Because if I, as a consultant, take it to these general managers and office decision makers in five-star hotels, they're not going to listen to me, he says. Niranjan knows the story. Because Niranjan has also been in that space with one of the most premium whatever hotel chains in the country, for what? For 40 years, right? So how, I don't know if this whatever digression I made with, with people like Guru Prasad and this little story of UVK Rao helps the conversation. But I had to tell you this because, these are all leaders who don't know what to do about it. It's not like they don't know the solutions. Rong Liu, you've been listening to us quietly. Would you want to speak? Yeah. Would you want to speak?
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think, resource conservation is definitely a very important thing. And it's also applies in water sector. Water sector, basically, providing water to population requires treatment. That treatment requires energy. So if we can reduce the energy consumption, that's always good. Regarding the water resource, lack thereof or something like that, it's water is not evenly distributed around different regions of the world. So some places they are prone to drought. They are lacking water resources, but some other places they don't. So water is not something that is exhaustible. It's circular. You use it, it goes back to ocean, and it comes back. So it's not like other resources like fossil fuels or some mines like phosphorus and potash. Those are ingredients for fertilizers. Those are exhaustible. So in general, so water and these other resources conservation is very important, because I see I kind of worried that if we exhaust these exhaustible resources, then it's going to collapse, basically. And I'm worrying, if, for instance, if we don't have enough phosphorus or potash mine left, then we cannot mine them anymore. Then we have an immediate problem of fertilizer production, and that would impact the food production. That's a much bigger problem. So yeah, it's in general, conservation is very important, but water is a little bit different than the other part.
Yeah.
The other thing I think is water. Basically, water is a basic necessity. So using the monetary means like economics, sometimes you cannot jack up the price very high, because a lot of people, larger numbers of people in societies are poor. They don't have a lot of income. So if you jack up the water price very high, then they couldn't afford it. That is, I think that is why, water price in general is not very high, because you need to provide this service to the populations. And another thing is water like wastewater, you know, the yak factor. Yeah, in general, you know, people have that that perception that they need to be educated because you know, along a long river, the upstream people, they use water, they discharge the water, treated wastewater to the river, and downstream people, they would get the water and treat it again and for the drinking water. So it's always happening. It's all water are recycled water, just like somebody earlier said. You know, we are drinking water that has been used probably millions years ago by another human being that drank the same water molecule in that time. So this yak factor, I think we just need to let the people know that that is, you know, kind of just a psychological. It's not very rational.
Yeah.
I'd like to respond to Ronglu's comments. Especially I'd like to respond to one thought you sparked, and then another just to respond to your resource conservation. That conservation of water is different from other sectors. I agree with you that it is different in that water is a renewable resource. The problem with water is that it's not going to come back where you think it's going to come back, as in, you know, we get water, we get rain, but it may not rain in the same places all the time. We get a different spatial mismatch, a different spatial distribution. So it could rain in the ocean, and the ocean may be far away, which means that we have to go treat the water, and it's going to be more expensive to treat that water to bring it. And transportation for water is extremely expensive. It's not like energy, for example, that the transportation is cheap. So it is a renewable resource, but if, you know, an area becomes arid, then it becomes a lot more expensive to bring that water to you. And so in that situation, you're going to need a lot of energy, and energy is going to be, you know, that's what's going to drive up water prices.
Sure, go on.
There's one more thought, and I thought that was particularly interesting that you brought up about the yuck factor. And I want to tie it to what you were talking about, Hari, and with the different perspectives, in that we can learn from other sectors. We can learn. You were talking about the energy sector, but there's one sector, and Ronglu, you brought up the food sector, and it got me thinking about, you know, snails, for example, or different foods that people may find, or crickets, or whatever it is. Some people may find, I'm not going to eat that, but other people may eat it. But, you know, there is a yuck factor with food for some populations with certain foods, and we have to figure. I don't have an answer for what can overcome the yuck factor. I wish I did, but we can learn from other sectors to kind of get an idea of what may work. And food, I think, would be one of those sectors that would be particularly interesting to learn from.
Sure. Ronglu, I'll add only one point on what you said about water being renewable. You're right about it. For instance, the part that I come from, India, we have had about 5,000 billion cubic meters of water annually for 1,000 years. Unfortunately, from about 1950, our population has gone up from 300 to 1250 million, 4 times. Now, and the quantum of water is the same. While we have the other challenges that Rashid pointed out, that it's not going to rain exactly where it rained the last year or the year before or 10 years prior. So the hauling of water, sometimes from below the ground, sometimes from distances, is part of the challenge of energy cost as well as financial cost. I'll stop there. Over to you, Mary.
Hari, may I?
Yes.
From Ronglu. You know, he alluded that, you know, water prices not increase because the poor cannot pay for it.
Yeah.
Today we have so much technology that the government of every country knows who's earning how much. They should price water on basis of Hari's earning capacity based on his income tax returns. Simple solution, but the willingness to do this is not there. How do we build up on these kind of ideas?
Sure.
That's a fascinating point. I'm happy to talk about it if unless someone else wants to talk about something.
Please do. Go on.
No, so one, I agree with you that potentially we have the capacity, but there are a few issues. In some places it's extremely hard to actually identify people. at least identify people accurately. I think in India you have a robust system, but in other places in the world, it's extremely hard to identify people for social services that require need. And there's a lot of error, giving people resources when they don't need it and otherwise. But setting that issue aside, water utilities, at least in many places, are restricted by law. That they can't distinguish between customers and charge them different rates. They have to be equitable. We can do what you're saying through, let's say, government, this redistribution, but that runs into the first problem of identification. But two, I think it's exactly what you're saying. It's government will and capacity. I think with COVID, we start to see a new era of, willingness from the government parts to give resources and something like, a universal basic income to cover some costs. But it's still, that is a challenge.
I'm putting something in the chat about, it's a TED talk that looked at the actual pricing elements, like AR just suggested, where you provide for everyone, but then you provide scalable rates to disincentivize the big users and to sort of penalize, wasters. And it's very effective. But I'd like to turn it back to you all, because you've made tremendous progress on your 10 billion liter or 1,000 crore liter goal. And it's amazing in just 10 months. And so maybe you could tell us what has been most effective. I know you're doing aerators. I know you're using the technology. I know you have some really good apartment, supporters, but what would you say has made it possible for you to get that far so fast?
Usha, Kinney, would you want to respond to that? Usha?
Yeah, I'm very much here. I'm just thinking about it. No, I think I'll pass that.
I'll put it like this to you. In this city, Mary, to you and generally to all of you, we have 4 solutions which have become mandated, meaning it's a government regulation. That is number one. Second is that compliance has been only by default. Only about 15% of the, of water users and pulse levels have actually complied with the law. All we have done to achieve whatever the little that we have, about 1 billion liters, which is not small if you ask me actually, but by our target of 10 billion liters, 1 billion liters seems small. Has any city done anything over, let us say, a few million liters? I will say 10 million, 5 million liters. I remember somebody talked to me about how in an entire year, a national industrial association achieved 5 million liters. And I said, what are you talking about? So here we have got 1 billion liters that we have achieved, and I believe it is small. We have people within the group who are saying we are committed to securing up to another 3 billion liters. That's 300 crore liters to the 100 crore liters that we have. I mean, since there are Indians here and we have this crore and lakh business, I'm saying million and billion. Okay. So to therefore go back to your question, Mary, in the last, let us say 2 months, I have personally been feeling that somewhere those among us who are participating, who are more transactional than committed to the cause. That is, people who are coming here to see, hey, is there a way I can get, this group to give me more work, for feeding my own business as a green solution provider, which is not a wrong thing at all. I believe it's a good thing. They are finding that it doesn't happen directly like this. This is an organic process. You all know it's not going to happen overnight. This is on one side. The other is that we suddenly found a very nice way of doing it. We said we will simply reward not the solution providers, not people like us who are willing to champion the cause and advocate it, but those who have gone and adopted it. And those who have adopted it usually are clients of this small set of solution providers. And we are saying, let's go and, give them commendation awards. And we found that that was a nice instrument for us to see that we are able to get to some kind of a process where we are able to measure and verify as to what has been done, what technology has been adopted or put into place, and how it can therefore inspire more such acts from people who want to take such adoption of water solutions. I don't know if I've explained or helped you understand it better to the question of yours, but I just thought I'd say this. And maybe I'll ask Suresh Pai, who's chairperson of the to perhaps speak. He is a chartered accountant, basically, who retired maybe 1 or 2 years ago, came to Bangalore from Chennai, which is another city to the east of us, about 200 miles from here. And he now lives in Bangalore in an apartment which is leading some of these cutting edge solutions. They are near zero on water, and they are 70% independent of the energy grid. Over to you, Suresh Bhai.
Yeah, thank you. You want me to talk on water conservation or the steps which WOW is taking in Bangalore?
Yeah, that is her question. Maybe Egbert is asking us how we are going about these targets. And
See, we have identified the apartments which consumes a major portion of water in Bangalore. We have around 20,000 apartments. And what we have done is we have identified the groups, apartment group, schools group, etc. That is water recovery group. So the total of all these groups constitute around 1,000 crore liters of saving. This is the target. This is the mission for the current year. Now, how we are going to do that was that we will identify every month around 10 to 20 apartments. And over a period of 1 year, we were supposed to identify around 100 apartments and achieve a target of around 250 crore. That is 2.5 billion crore liters of water. Now, we are going ahead by means of various steps which the apartments are supposed to take, like, for example, rainwater harvesting, then STP, then water recovery, then water meters, aerators. These are the small steps which you are taking, which will get us at least 250 crores liters is the minimum which you have targeted, but the scope is more. I am sure that we'll be able to achieve somewhere around maybe 150 to 200 crores, but the action is being initiated and we are waiting for the results. We have another 3 months to go. And I'm sure that the target of 1,000 crores we'll be able to achieve at least to some extent.
Yeah, that's impressive. Very impressive.
I just want to talk one thing. Like Dr. Hari put one nice phrase, right? I mean, I'm not sure whether people caught it or not. It's called organic growth, right? So let me give you one example, right? I'm also joining the citizen meeting of our infrastructure project, which is Bengaluru Metro. Okay, so I'm sure like you guys have heard about this project because Bangalore is one of the latest additions to the metro networks, basically, even though it was called as Silicon Valley. So by design, this entire 272 kilometers of metro network has rainwater harvesting, right? So whatever rainwater collects on the viaduct, that is either to be given to the nearby lake or it has to be regenerated into the underground. So now government is bringing in this kind of a change in their infrastructure projects. So what better can be the example for the organic growth, right? Organic growth is somewhere like government picks up from these kind of initiatives and they try to inculcate these ideas in their own projects. So I would say like, I mean, whatever government buildings comes in, if they actually built in with the proper rainwater harvesting system, that itself crosses 1,000 crore liters in Bangalore.
Sure.
Actually, government has a big role to play in conserving water, especially, the waters which falls on the flyovers and various government buildings. See, generally the government buildings are big and government has infrastructure to carry out this, unlike the small buildings. So I'm sure government has got a major role to play, not only the conservation of water, even the saving of the water which falls on the public roads, etc.
But what you're all pointing out, I
absolutely.
like to build on that, is that it takes everything. It takes, where's, I think we lost someone, but it takes the idea of having an assessment, having the technologies, having the government mandate up above, having the right pricing, and incentives to change, and then the recognition and awards. And like AR said, it really helps if you may not know what a cluster is. A cluster is a local area that advances and promotes water savings and allows for technologists and innovators to gather. But what AR has found, like if you have this area in Bangalore, perhaps at the Microsoft Pavilion, or what you guys have created, this Wow Action Forum that gets the word out, that makes everyone in the community aware. And the publicity that you have generated is also really amazing, the stories. So I think you should take I just want to congratulate you all. Because
gracious of you, Mary, but we have a very, very long way to go. We know we have not done enough. We know all the things that are failing for us. We draw a lot of succor and strength from just the fact that people like you are willing to sort of partner this process with us. Ahmed Rashid, I have put down at the chat box a small note on WOW credits. You said earlier, before Mary spoke and before Suresh Bhai spoke, that you would want to engage if there are some financial or any such instruments, if I got you right, that could possibly be stimulating good behavior from consumers, right? I'd like to see if I can engage with you on that small note that I've shared on the chat box. You could copy that and paste it onto your own notes while we continue that conversation with you after this meeting of today. As I keep telling people, yes. You wanted to say something earlier about on this financing bit when that was discussed. Would you want to take that up now?
I was just going to say that's what you're doing is extremely impressive, and I agree with Mary that it's commendable. And I really appreciate the positive spin that you're putting on, rewarding people that actually are doing good behavior, and inspiring other people to see them as positive examples to follow, rather than the other options. One of the things, just an aside, but thinking about water, thinking about just incentivizing or encouraging behaviors, I'm thinking about contrasting your approach with, for example, what's going on with vaccines in the US, right? Trying to get people that are unvaccinated to get vaccinated by either offering them money or doing other things, but trying to encourage them to get vaccinated. The problem I have with this approach is that you're essentially rewarding people for bad behavior. You held out this long, we're going to reward you by giving you money by get vaccinated later. You're not rewarding the people that were good citizens. And this, I like your approach because you're rewarding people for being good citizens. And I would be more than happy to engage with you and evaluate something like this to see if how much we can engage people through this kind of program.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Very grateful to you for saying that. It's soothing because we are asphyxiating just now. We are gasping for air. We want to see how this movement can gain speed and strength, as Suresh said. Back to you, Mary. Do you want to say something? Niranjan, you have heard all of them. You have been one. Soldier is a very poor word. You are, like Luke, you are one of those real evangelists, biblical evangelists when it comes to water. What do you have to say, Niranjan, to all of these people?
In the last 2 months, I've acquired a PhD in dishwashing.
I'm sure.
And it's been very interesting because I realize how much water we waste in.
Well, you tell them about your PMC, the maid challenge, and I'm sure Ahmed will be interested in that.
No, that I'll tell you later because I always like to talk about the micro and then how do you flare it up the macro.
Okay.
Otherwise, we're not putting new ideas. Most of the ideas that I've heard is, known. We have heard it many times, but these new ideas have to be taken up. So now I said, to hell with technology. How do I reduce my water consumption for dishwashing with whatever I have? So I became a little organized because when you're cooking, and I become a part-time cook also, and a bottle washer, right? So there are some dishes which are large, some are small, some are really small, etc. So I put the largest dish at the bottom. Then I wash the medium-sized dishes, and then I keep one large dish next to the where the soap is. And the final rinse of the water, and don't throw it down the drain, which is the current practice in most homes. I put it there, and whatever water I have saved during lunch, that rinsed water which has been kept in a vessel is used for rinsing plates and other vessels for dinner. So the point is, it's again circular water in the kitchen. And this needs to be refined by perhaps coming out with buckets or bins which help us to do this systematically. I have done it crudely.
Fair enough. Actually, to some of you who have not seen it, this what Niranjan is talking about of simple recycling it and using it without treating has been sort of documented in what we call Water Voices, which is a newsletter. Mary, I think, has been gracious enough to host it on the GWW portal also. So you might find it there. Mary, now back to you. It's close to 8 a.m. for you. I want you to see how you want to sum up this meeting, while maybe you can help us set what you believe could be the theme for the next. I mean, so that, the others will also concur and think with us.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think, thank you, Hari, for this platform, the amazing WOW Action initiatives. And I think, Usha, you've been quiet, but I think one of the big drivers that I've witnessed is just the youth, the fact that you have this senior level of experts with lots of knowledge willing to give and mentor a very passionate youth group, with Mamta and Nikki and Ganesh and all of your, action-oriented forums. So I think it's really a commendable model that I would like to implement too in the US, because we have many people who are retiring from the workforce, but we have a very active next generation that feels extremely passionate. And in fact, I was at a school and the kids actually cried. They were very concerned that they wouldn't see any water in their generation. And they wrote a book about sad water poems about the tragedy that we're facing. So I think if we can combine that passion of the youth together with the knowledge and the expertise of people who have modeled these programs, we could take off like you're taking off. And I think we don't have the mandates. The other piece that you guys have, which is really nice, is the top down, as we heard from I forget the woman who's doing the wells, who was really Alpana Patel, no, but Ramesh.
Kalpana Ramesh.
Kalpana Ramesh, yes, a really beautiful story of how the government is actually leading everyone in doing this. So I would just ask, what we want to do in Q2 of next year is introduce this engagement vehicle through schools, through cities, and have youth sort of compete to understand, do you know your water? Who's the wisest water town? And have everyone complete this 5-minute survey so that they can all know their water and be rewarded through coins and things like that. But we, for a future initiative here on the WOW group, I think also water quality is a really important. Do you know your water quality? And how to address that? But
in fact, since we have somebody from Morocco here, one thought comes to me, and I have been telling this story nearly everywhere for over the last, say, 10, 12 years, from that time when I did some stint of work there. If you have to dig anything as a bore well to hit the deeper aquifer, you cannot do it there without permission directly from a minister at Rabat, the capital of Morocco. That is, if you want to do a dug well, you want to do an open well till about 15 meters, you're allowed to do it. And this is not a law or a practice in Morocco alone. This is so in almost all Francophone parts of the world. You can go to Laos, you will find this. You'll go to Algiers, you'll find this. Of course, in France, you'll find this. Morocco was not a French colony. It was only a protectorate for some, I think, for about 40 or 50 years, until around 1949 or something. They got, the French to go away. 64, absolutely. Sorry, I forgot that.
54.
54. Okay. Albert Camus, who wrote his a book about that same time, I suppose, the 1950s. So my thing with you, Veri, is this. Laws like that do not exist in these parts. In India, it's not freedom that we enjoy. It is licentiousness. It's not liberty we enjoy. It is complete anarchy that we have here. Anyone can do what he likes. And without, therefore, the use of the stick, with just, reasoning with human beings, I don't think we will be able to secure anything like this. Even if it might sound a little negative, this is how I feel. I think Ganesh Shanbag, by the grin that I see on his face, he entirely sort of endorses what I'm saying.
No, what I was thinking is like you mentioned about this licentiousness and like,
Yeah.
I mean, what the way I think about this is like if we don't control it, right? One fine day our borewells may pop out of Mary's or Dr. Raj's backyard or other way of the world.
Absolutely, we are going to go that deep. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, anyway, Ahmad
Okay.
is not far away. We will be reaching him in next 10 years.
I know.
It'll be a
There
shortcut.
you
You
are.
can come visit anytime.
Absolutely. Great. Very, very lovely having you all. Thank you, Rongview, for being here. Your 4 or 5 points, even if you spoke so little, very perceptive. We'll be making little recordings. We usually do that. And then we host them on various web channels. And we'll continue to do that. I've stopped thanking Mary Eggert. It's very embarrassing to thank her because, she's doing so much, and every second breath, I have to say something about what she's doing to help us. It's 8 a.m. She starts at 6 a.m. She's sending me something at 5:45 a.m. I'm tracking all this since this evening. So thank you again to you, Mary.
It's just a pleasure and honor. We really feel indebted.
Very lovely. You simply do not know how much you have helped us in these moments of despondence when there are not enough people who are joining us. Neil Matthews is here, and I must acknowledge his presence. Mamta is here, I must acknowledge her presence. But a whole lot of others, 55, 60 of them on the executive group are not coming in. We don't know why. We are trying to see how we can understand that. They are not children where you take the stick and ask, and do something else. But we need to understand why they are not practicing. Why are they not participating? Anyway, these are questions that we have. And I'm really thankful, grateful to you all for giving us this, one second wind, as they say, or, to get wherever.